Hi, welcome to the author interview with Miss Panda. I'm your host, Amanda Schoenblaget, Miss Panda, and today I'm so excited. I'm having my friend and author, Maria. Maria, hi. Maria went Adcock here, and she is the author of It's Chinese New Year. Curious George. Do you see that? I would probably need to see the book
Yes, I
first.
have it right here.
Yeah, can we go closer?
Yes.
So exciting. Look at that. Curious George is celebrating the Chinese New Year. Well, Maria, you probably know her. She's the founder of the biculturalmama.com, and she is an award parenting blog winner, and also she is a prolific writer. Also, at the same time, all her works have been showing up in different places. She actually even appeared on Dr. O's show. Do you know that? Yeah, she's so passionate about sharing world culture with children, with parents. She's been writing for the multicultural kids blogs, and also she's been participating as and also has been a co-host for the multicultural children's book day for years. Welcome, Maria. Thank you for being here with us today.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure to be talking to you today about my new book. And that was just such a wonderful introduction. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I just look at the background. It's Chinese New Year, Curious George. I was like, well, it's not Chinese New Year yet, but you definitely bring us the festival feeling of the New Year. So, wow, I think it's so fun and so wonderful to see the main character in a series of beloved books that is introducing a culture that they haven't touched before. Can you tell us a little bit about this series?
Yes. So the Curious George tab board books have been around for many, many years. The publisher has published many holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Halloween, St. Patrick's Day, and they have expanded. They have Ramadan, and now Curious George is learning about Chinese New Year, which is really exciting. I think that Curious George is an international character that kids all over the world love him. So I think it's great that Curious George is learning about the other cultures and the kids can see themselves in the books.
Well, that is such an important thing you just mentioned. So kids can see themselves in the books. Why is it important? Why is it the representation is so important for different cultures in the books kids read?
Well, there's several reasons for that. First of all, we live in a multicultural world and we all intersect with all the technology and so forth. We can get to know people from all over the world. So it is just natural and organic to just learn about our world around us and outside of our own bubble where we live. And also, it's just important to learn about other cultures of our friends and neighbors. If you live in a city where there's diverse friends and so forth, it's just really good to know about other people.
That is so true. And also, I think at the same time, when talking about when you were growing up as a first generation Chinese American, um, you probably didn't see a lot of books like that.
Absolutely. I mean, I will tell you that when I was growing up, I did not see Asian people in books or media. I remember seeing maybe like Calgon Take Me Away, one of those commercials, whatever. And maybe there was an Asian person at one point. So I was always interested in writing, even as a child. I knew I wanted to write a book. I just didn't think it was possible because I just never saw anyone who looked like me writing a book. So I feel like that if you can see it, you can be it. That is a quote I have heard before, and I think it's so true. So what I am striving to do is putting the culture and characters of like my background in different books so that kids can see themselves. And maybe there's going to be a kid out there who one day will be like, wow, maybe I can be an author too. And I've seen someone else be an author who looks like me. That's just something I didn't have growing up, and I would like to do that now for the next generation.
That's beautiful. And actually, you probably would like to touch on your writing career actually didn't start just here, even though you started it by culturalmama.com, award-winning blog. Actually, before that, in corporate life, can you share a little bit secret with us? I think people well know your writing background actually came from a long way.
I mean, when I was a kid, I have always liked writing. Even in high school, I was entering writing contests and doing well in them. And then I've always been tied to writing in some way. I just didn't know how to get onto the writing side. So growing up and then going to college, and I was a communications major. I did eventually end up working for Time Inc., a magazine publishing company, but it wasn't on the editorial side. It was on the business side.
Right.
My MBA, so I did the business route. But I always looked to the editorial side, thinking like, oh, I wish I could be doing what they're doing. I just didn't know how. Um, so I've always been tied to that. And then after I had my first child, I started the blog by culturalmama.com. And originally, interesting enough, I wanted to start it because I knew one day I wanted to write books. And this was going to be my platform to talk about my books. I just didn't know it was going to take over 10 years to get to this point. That's how it is sometimes in the publishing industry or just life in general. I had a couple kids along the way, so you stop and go with your career goals sometimes, and but it worked out at the end. You just had to have a lot of patience and perseverance, and now finally I am a published author.
Yes, yes, we're so excited. And the very interesting is Chinese New Year. And then I know later on you probably give us a surprise. If you're going to surprise about the book. Okay, we'll keep it for a little bit longer. And when you talk about the Chinese New Year, Curious George is Chinese New Year, Curious George. Well, why you focus on the Chinese New Year? Because we know in Chinese we also call it Lunar New Year, in Mandarin Chinese, 农历年. So I am just very curious why the title of the book is It's Chinese New Year, Curious George.
Yes, that was a very intentional decision on my part and the publisher's part because the traditions that I mentioned in the book are specific to Chinese culture. So it is accurate to call it Chinese New Year. However, we do acknowledge, and in the book I do acknowledge that other cultures celebrate the New Year and they may call it something else. Korea has their own New Year, Korea New Year, Vietnam has their New Year called Tet. Indonesia, Malaysia, there are many, many cultures who celebrate New Year's, and the traditions are not always the same. Sometimes there are overlaps, but a lot of times they're very different. Like Chinese New Year is 15 days, other countries they might have it 3 days. In my book, because I actually use Chinese characters in some of the story and talk about that, I just wanted to acknowledge that other countries celebrate in their own way. It's not all the same. Chinese New Year and Lunar New Year are not always interchangeable because we want to acknowledge these other countries.
I find that is being really considerate and then also with such empathy, because actually growing up in the Chinese community like I was, Chinese New Year, basically my grandparents will call it the Lunar New Year, 农历年, and a lot of people in Taiwan and China will also call it the Spring Festival, 春节. So when we talk about the Chinese New Year, is this just a translation dedicated to the people who are celebrating it? So I find it's a way to be multicultural and then also very inclusive, and then to consider it, being very considerate about the diversity of this very big festival, cultural festival being celebrated, not just in Asian countries, but also around the world. This is wonderful to hear that your specific focus on the traditions of the Chinese New Year. So can you give us a little bit inside story, like behind the scenes the story about this broad book, because we're so excited. The Chinese New Year, you have so much to share and so much to say. So give us a little bit taste of the book?
Okay, so for the Tab Book Board series for Curious George, they're kind of like atypical board books because they aren't just one word or one line per page, for babies. The way that they've been doing it for many, many years is that they have 4 stanzas of 4 lines each, so 16 lines per tab. So it ends up being, in my book, there are over 570 words, which is typical of a picture book. But this happens to be printed on board book cardboard, so it is considered a board book. So the language itself is not necessarily baby language because we do have full sentences, and the purpose of the book is to explain and educate about Chinese New Year traditions. So we do talk about things that and use words that maybe more advanced for 0 to 3-year-olds. But this is why we think it's great when parents and teachers read with the kids and they can talk about these things and explain what's going on and be interactive with the book, because at the end of the day it's about Curious George and his friend May learning and celebrating about the culture, and the young reader learning and also celebrating about the culture as well.
I think it's so interesting when we talk about the words, how many words in a book. A lot of times we can also see, because right now kids are quite advanced. The more we read to them, the more words they have, the more vocabulary or expression they hear. It's going to expand their horizon. Curious George is curious. I think all the kids, the young readers, are also curious as well. Kids, I would always say, kids actually thrive in curiosity. So thank you for bringing that up with us, so that let us understand actually this book has actually very extensive concepts and vocabulary in there, and then kids can grow with it, seems like
Absolutely.
it,
Yes,
right?
yes. Read it over and over again. Even when they're in elementary school, it'll still be relevant. So it's great that way. Thank you for bringing that up. It is true. It grows with you.
So this book actually is a part of the big series you've been talking about. And tell us, how did you feel when you got a notification say, hey, Maria, we want you to write this book about the Chinese New Year?
That was incredible because this is my debut book. And to have my debut book be featuring such an iconic brand like Curious George was just such a blessing. I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I want to thank my agent, Lynette Novak at the Seymour Agency, for bringing the opportunity to me. She was working with the publisher who was looking to expand the series into Chinese New Year and had asked agents, do you have a writer who knows about the holiday? And kind of coincidentally, I had already written a picture book manuscript about Chinese New Year. So my agent was like, oh, I have a writer who knows about Chinese New Year. And so she asked me if I was interested, and of course I was. And as part of the process, I had to submit samples of what I would write and submit to the publisher to apply, I guess you could call it that way. And the publisher thankfully loved what I submitted and said, yes, we want you to complete the book. So that's how it came to be. And I grew up with Curious George, so I was excited to be part of this brand.
Is it interesting? Like, I grew up with this, and now I'm going to write a story for Curious George. I also want to touch on the multicultural children's work you have done with the Multicultural Kid blogs and also the Multicultural Children's Book Day. Can you expand that? Because I know you published this book, and this book is actually coming very soon for the Chinese New Year in January.
Yes.
January 3rd. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so everybody, it's pre-order is on, so you can pre-order the book. So find it, pre-order it, and hold it during the Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year time, and share with your friends. Parents, feel free, I think, to read to the kids about the story, or so teachers will also really cherish this book. So let's talk about the multicultural children's work you have done over the years. Bicultural Mama, in your on your blog, actually, you talk about all kinds of aspects. You make the Asian American almost like a lifestyle, to be open to different cultures, and then all the things you've been writing. So share your mission for working in this direction, the multicultural kind of a lifestyle?
Yeah. So the multicultural lifestyle, that is just part of who I am and my children too. So it's very natural and it makes sense to write what you know. It's something I also feel very passionate about. I'm embracing my identity. So when I started Bicultural Mama, it was ideally um, originally for like the platform for my books, but of course I didn't know it was going to take over 10 years. So it evolved into a multicultural blog with a focus on Asian American culture. And the blog itself has evolved as many of ours have evolved over the years. At one point, I was doing a lot of just generic, kind of like mom blogging about products that kids use, especially when they were babies. I did that for a while, but then I didn't feel like it was fulfilling because I was just talking about other people's products. And what I really want to come back to was about multiculturalism and embracing diversity. And I did come back to that. If you look at my site now, so much of it is multicultural books, actually. So it just evolved into that direction. And then I've been a part of Multicultural Kids Blog, the organization, for probably, I don't know how long, since the beginning. What is that, 10 years perhaps? And it's great because we've seen all our kids grow up from little kids and now they're teenagers. And I've been involved with them as a board member and also as an editor. And I volunteer and help out with social media as well. And that has extended to another group called Multicultural Children's Book Day, which is an annual event that happens at the end of January each year. And it has a focus on multicultural authors and influencers and other people review the books on social media and their blogs. And I'm one of the co-hosts, as I believe you are too, yes, for many years. And it's been very fulfilling because this is just, like I said, part of who I am. It's part of my mission, and it's just a really good fit.
It's sometimes it's really hard to define us like with the background. So a lot of times that people talk about what do you mean you're multicultural? And then a lot of times I think outside of our own community, like Asian Americans and Chinese Americans, that people are very curious and that we want other people to come into this community and understand what we do. And I think your blog and now your book, it's Chinese New Year, Curious George, it's all a great channel for people, for everybody to come in and learn about that. And they know there are resources like this. And something, you talk about when you were younger growing up in the States, you didn't have a lot of that. So we really feel this is something opening up people's horizon, children's horizon to connect with the world. Actually, we're not talking about taking the flight and go somewhere else, but just at home, have a book and connect with the world outside of your own world.
Yes.
And with that said, I'm curious. I know you have a surprise for us. Can you read a couple of pages of It's Chinese New Year, Curious George for our listeners and audience?
Yes, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So this is a exclusive preview because the book does not come out until January 3rd of 2023, but just in time for Chinese New Year, which takes place on January 22nd, 2023. So I'm going to read the first couple pages. So
Here we go. Yes.
We're going to go to the first tab. If you see the first tab, we're going to learn about who is this little creature. Okay. So the first tab, it is called Let's Celebrate Chinese New Year. Okay. Welcome Chinese New Year, a special holiday. George is going to celebrate with his good friend named May. She shares the legend of Nian, a terrifying beast, and people who were brave enough to stop it and bring peace. So every year for 15 days, we celebrate this win. And after Chinese New Year ends, spring finally begins. In countries all around the world, cultures commemorate a time called Lunar New Year, and moon cycles set the date. So those are the first couple pages, your sneak peek preview. And that is the first tab of the book of It's Chinese New Year, Curious George.
That is so beautiful. And it's rhyming. And it's rhyming so beautifully. And I want to know the next step and next step and next step. No, I think you got everybody curious. How many tabs are there?
So there are 7 tabs, and
Okay.
each tab has a theme. They're almost like each tab is like its own short story
Yes.
about it. So we have a tab on the zodiac signs, a tab about decorating your house, and the Fu sign, which is a way to welcome and good luck.
Yes.
We have a tab about food and the big feast when you get together with your family and friends. We talk about the red envelopes, the lucky money, which is what kids really look forward to.
Yes.
Holiday. We talk about the celebration, the parades, the dragon dance, and that at the end we have the spring festival, which introduces the beginning of spring.
Yes. Wow. So the last tab is like the lantern. Do I see a lantern
Yes,
there?
the lantern.
Ah, okay. So that's a hint. It's the Lantern Festival. You need to figure out why there's a Lantern Festival there.
Exactly.
Wow, this is so exciting. I'm so happy that this book is here. It's Chinese New Year, Curious George, and then it's going to be so much fun for the kids to learn to be curious about the Lunar New Year, the Chinese New Year, the celebration, the traditions. So
Yes.
Maria, what is the main message you want to deliver? You know, now you have this book out. What do you want kids to see? What do you want the parents to read inside and the educator can share with the young readers?
I would love for kids and their parents and educators to read the book and realize there is so much in the world that we can learn about and celebrate about other people. And in this particular book, it talks about Chinese culture and traditions. And I'm just so happy to be able to share that with everyone. And I really hope that kids and adults enjoy it and take something away from it, and maybe even celebrate Chinese New Year when it takes place in January.
Totally. And I think the idea is not just reading, but your hands to do things. So in the book, as I can see, there are food, there are maybe the lanterns you can make. There's so many things, and be more curious about people around you and about yourself. I think a lot of times when we're reading a book, we learn more about ourselves. We can be more curious about our own home culture and then expand that to the friends around you. Are they also celebrating this holiday? How do they celebrate it, and how do they actually, what traditions they have at their house?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So Maria, where can people find your book? It's Chinese New Year, Curious George.
So right now the book is available for pre-order before the launch date of January 3rd, and it is available on all major retail sites that sell books. So obviously, there's Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Books a Million, Walmart, Target, the independent bookstore sites, but they're also on there too. So
wonderful.
they're
Yeah.
everywhere right now, which is great.
Everywhere book is sold, basically you will find it's Chinese New Year, Curious George. And then before you go, we want to know if parents want to know more, educators want to know more about your resources, your blog, where can they locate you?
They can find me at biculturalmama.com. And I also have a Facebook page, Maria Wen Adcock-Author, that they can go to.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Maria, for spending time with me and all our audience and listeners, and also share the preview of your book. It's Chinese
Thank you
New
so
Year,
much.
Curious George.
It's been great being on your show. I will call it a show. And I'm very honored to be your guest. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And we'll say something. Happy New Year to everybody, because that's an expression people all need to learn. So should we try it together?
Mandarin, right?
Yes, we're going to say Happy New Year in Mandarin Chinese. So you can use it anytime, right? The regular New Year or the Chinese New Year. So let's give it a try. 新年快乐!
Yay! Happy New Year.